Losing my hair was the most painful part of having cancer. I watched it fall out in big clumps, covering my pillows like carnage.
That night, I just needed to be held. So once in bed, he held me tight and I could just hear him say, "We got this."
No one has even mentioned clinical trials to me, and I am angry that I have been excluded from the front lines of medical research.
Tonight's theme is Living with Cancer.
No matter who you are or where you think you're at in life, a cancer diagnosis changes everything. And not just your body and how you feel, but your relationships, your priorities, your vision of the future. Tonight, our tellers are going to share generously and bravely their stories of how they have used perseverance, love, and humor to overcome.
My name is Leslie Winoku. I am a professional journalist and speechwriter. I'm originally from Austin, Texas, but I spent the last 5 years living in Taipei, Taiwan as a foreign correspondent. I'm now back in the US, starting a graduate program at Harvard, and had just moved to the city when I was diagnosed with a rare aggressive form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
So whether it's on the page or on the stage, storytelling is just intrinsically a vulnerable act. You specifically are here to share a story about your cancer diagnosis and everything, that's come after that. I'm just wondering what brings you here? What gives you the strength, the motivation, and what do you gain from sharing the story and being so vulnerable?
I beat cancer. I just finished treatment last week, so I'm very fresh. I am here on this stage, and this is the start of rebuilding a life that I'm proud of. I think there is a temptation to go back to the way things were after cancer, after something so traumatic. And I'm asking myself right now, how do you resume a life interrupted? I don't know, to be honest. The future for me is very uncertain. All I know is I'm in charge, and this is my way of starting the rest of my life and going towards a path of healing. The first time that a hairstylist turned me away, I felt like I couldn't breathe. She took one look at my frizzy hair flopping in the wind, and she was terrified. I tried to massage her and tell her, no, it's okay. I have a scheduled appointment. But that wasn't the issue. She was afraid to touch my hair. I was 25, living in Taiwan, alone, and all I wanted was a haircut. Still, she shut the doors in my face. And I remember standing outside the salon, looking through the gleaming glass windows and the sparkly, state-of-the-art hair dryers, the happy, chatty customers. I realized that none of them looked like me. None of them had hair like mine. My roots are very diverse, not just the roots of my hair, but the roots of my heritage. My mom was from Vietnam, and my dad is from Nigeria. Growing up in America, I felt like I had to choose between being Black and being Asian. My father was constantly ignored by cashiers, and I watched him also be routinely stopped by officers. He taught me that being African was a burden. Meanwhile, my mother taught me that being Asian could be my escape hatch. So, my mom took me to the hair salon to get my hair chemically straightened, a lot like this. Back then, my hair was this thicket of tangled curls that my coaches and my teachers alike told me needed to be tamed. Translation, it needed to look less Black and more Asian. No one taught me that being Black could be beautiful. I only knew that being Black could get me killed, and being Asian might protect me. So my mom went to the salon with me every 3 months, like clockwork. The hairstylist would lather on this thick white paste atop my head, and she would tell me to sit underneath a heated, hooded hairdryer for hours. And I held in my breath so I wouldn't inhale the noxious fumes that were all around me. The heat would release these harsh, toxic chemicals that would seep into my scalp and destroy my textured African tresses, scorching my curls into obedience. I didn't do my hair. My hair did me. After I graduated from college, I thought that by moving to Asia, I'd finally be embraced. And every so often, I'd go to the hair salon, but it'd be more of the same. Countless stylists who were afraid to touch my hair. Finally, after living for 5 years in Taiwan, I found a hairstylist who agreed to cut my messy mane. She glided her shears like poetry in motion, cutting off my frayed ends with perfect precision. She made my curls bounce with verve. And she made me feel beautiful in a continent that disparages dark skin. Last year, I moved back to America to start a graduate program at Harvard, but something was terribly wrong. My head felt woozy, my heart raced, and my neck bulged like a balloon. It felt like someone was taking their hands and wrapping it around my windpipe, slowly choking me to death. So I went to a hospital in Cambridge to get it checked out. But still, the young, male, white doctor stared back at me and said, "I'm sorry, miss, but I don't see anything wrong with you. And we're not going to waste our hospital resources to do a CT scan for you. There's nothing we can do." I had never felt more powerless in my life. Several weeks later, I was rushed to the ER, but this time I was in critical condition. I was riddled with blood clots, and my heart was struggling to pump blood to the rest of my body. I was literally gasping for air. 5 months ago, an oncologist diagnosed me with a rare, aggressive form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A tumor the size of a grapefruit was filling my chest cavity and crushing my lungs. I felt so alone. Other than the orderlies and the janitors, I looked around and I rarely saw people who looked like me, not on the cancer ward and not on my medical team. But I didn't have time to think about that. Almost immediately, a nurse dug an IV into my arm, hooked me up to an infusion machine, and started me on chemo, which still courses through my veins today. Having poison pumped into my body every 3 weeks was excruciating. I lost my sense of smell and taste. I suffered from neuropathy, night sweats, hot flashes, panic attacks, blurred vision, and even vaginal atrophic bleeding. But actually, losing my hair was the most painful part of having cancer. I watched it fall out in big clumps, filling my bathtub and covering my pillows like carnage. So I took a page from the playbook of my childhood, hiding behind my Asianness and escaping from my Blackness. I bought 2 wigs. I wore my curly-haired wig with my friends and family when I wanted to be like myself and feel comfortable. And I donned this shiny, straight-haired wig along with my Harvard sweatshirt when I needed to go to the hospital for chemo infusions. The Harvard sweatshirt and the straight hair were meant to camouflage me like a chameleon, to shed my black skin and morph me into a more palatable Asian shape. I wore them like armor. But the recent rise in anti-Asian violence has showed me that sometimes the shields we crouch behind can be dangerously thin. After 5 months of treatments, the tumor has disappeared, and I am officially in remission. I beat cancer. And now that I've survived lymphoma, I think I'm gonna leave my wigs at home.
My name is Daniel G. Garza. I live in Laguna Beach, California. Originally from Monterrey, Mexico. I am an HIV, anal cancer, and mental health advocate. I also do a little bit of entertainment, and I'm a spiritual life coach.
So AIDS has had a significant impact on the Latino community, and I'm wondering, what have you done and what have been the challenges about combating stigma, fear, and shame around AIDS and HIV in that community?
So in the Latino community, it's really hard to break the barriers of culture, religion, and social norms. Having survived AIDS, anal cancer, the mental health issues that come with it, through my storytelling, because Latinos, we love a good story, it's easy for me to share what I've been through, my timeline, in a way that they can understand it better. And if I get to do it in my language, in Espanol, they can understand it, and it makes it a lot easier.
So all that you've been through and talking about it as well, what would be a lesson or two that you've learned about you, the person?
I'm a lot more resilient than I thought I was. And the second thing that I've learned is I'm very blessed. From the outside in, it would seem that my timeline looks pretty messed up. There's a lot of valleys in there, and there is, but because I believe I'm so resilient, is that when I get to the top of those mountains, the view is so glorious.
I am wondering tonight, when people hear your story, what would you want them most to take away as a lesson or an afterthought?
Life is funny, laughter is healing, and it's not the end till it's the end. It is Tuesday, May 5th, 2015. It is Taco Tuesday and Cinco de Mayo. Basically, it's a national holiday for me. My boyfriend of 3 years at the time, his name's Christian, and he still had that new boyfriend smell. We were getting ready to go to the store and get everything we needed for our taco and nacho dinner. But right before I decided to call the doctor because something wasn't feeling right with my body. So instead of going to the grocery stores, we found ourselves at the doctor's office. We're sitting there and the doctor says, it's anal cancer. I kind of anticipated it, but I didn't want to hear it. Like when you're going to be in a car accident and you're just waiting for the hit. So I looked down at the floor and I took a big sigh, and I cannot neither deny or confirm that a tear rolled down my cheek. But I felt the doctor get up and stand in front of me, and he said, look at me. And I find myself looking at his shoes, nice shoes. And he says, look at me. And I probably made it up to his knees. And I said, I'm fine. He put his hand on my shoulder, squeezed a little, and he raised his voice and said, look at me. When I looked at him, he said, we got this. And I knew I could trust him, that I can count on him, he was gonna be with me till the end. Because usually doctors tell you, everything's gonna be okay, you're gonna get through this. But he said, we got this. Now, the reason this makes a big difference is because in September of 2000, I was diagnosed with AIDS. And I was in the hospital, and my boyfriend at the time came to see me at the hospital once, just once. So on the way home in the car, Christian is driving, and I'm in the passenger seat, and without looking at him, I just said, if you want out, this is it. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, if you want out of this, it's okay. It's like, I don't know what you mean. I said, what I'm saying is, if you want to break up with me now, I can tell people that I broke up with you, and we're okay. And he's like, that's not gonna happen. I said, well, just letting you know that if I'm going through treatment and you break up with me then, you're gonna be the guy that broke up with the guy that's going through cancer. And that's not gonna look very good for you, I'm just saying right now. And without skipping a beat, he goes, we got this. So I thought that going to chemo was gonna be like, this is real. But actually what happened is I had to go in for a surgery where they put in this little portacat in your chest. It's a little surgery, but it's basically where they pin the chemo into you. It's kind of like a little game of pin the chemo on the Mexican kind of game. That morning, I was nervous, I was having panic attacks, and to be quite honest, I was mad. But Christian, knowing me the way he did, he decided to just play with me, and he would be patient and make jokes. My favorite medicine, sarcasm. because he knew that I am not a victim of life and I needed him to be there for me. Because there were times after treatment that I had chemo brain. And chemo brain made me think that every time he left the house, he would find somebody else that wasn't broken. And it made me think that all my friends didn't want to be my friends anymore because I wasn't well. The first time we went to treatment, there was a nurse there, and we waited for her to come and do the chemo. Now, let me tell you this. One of the cool things about having anal cancer is all the butt jokes. You have free range of them. So we're in the waiting room making a butt joke, and the nurse walks in and she says, I am so glad that you're laughing because couples who laugh through hard times will make it. But if you break anywhere in that, it's over. So we made a pact that we were always gonna laugh. After treatment, there were some fistulas that were created. The thing about fistulas is that you can't control the stuff that comes out of them. If you know, you know. I had to wear diapers, and that wasn't the worst part. The worst part is that every time I changed my diaper, I had to take a shower. And every time I did that, he had to spray me with his antibiotics so that I wouldn't get anything happen to me. That antibiotic stung, it hurt, and it made me mad every time I had to do it. So this one particular day, it must have been like the 5th or 6th shower, and I was just done. So I'm getting ready to go to bed, and Christian goes, babe, you need to change your diaper. And I knew what that meant. And that was the diaper that broke my back. I was done. I went hysterical. I had a panic attack. I'm like, I'm done. I'm through with this. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of being this way. Now, let me clarify. I was not tired of living. I just didn't want to live that way anymore. I'm like, I'm through with this. Please, just do it. And he's like, do what? I'm like, end it. Just put a pillow over my head. Just finish me off. Put me out of my misery. He's like, that's not the way this works. I'm like, I'll write an email. I'll do a video. I'll call the police myself, and I'll tell them that I told you to do it. And he's like, babe, that's not the way it happens. I'm like, just do something. So he's a tall guy, and he did the best that he could. He held me tight, gave me my pain pill, and put me to bed. Now, truth be told, I am not a snuggler. But that night, I just needed to be held. So once in bed with a clean diaper, he held me tight, and I could just hear him say, we got this. The last day of treatment, the same nurse that put in my first chemo put in my last chemo. That day was 4th of July. So if you're keeping track, Cinco de Mayo, 4th of July, yeah. So we're still making butt jokes and we're still laughing, and she walks in and she goes, oh, it's you guys. And we're like, yes. She hears the laugh and she goes, I'm so glad you're still laughing. That means you made it. So just to finish off the story, we're still together. We still do butt jokes. We still celebrate Cinco de Mayo, and we got this. Thank you.
My name is Mel Mann. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia. I retired from the military, and some of my hobbies are like chess, bridge, reading, running, dancing to James Brown. I am a leukemia survivor, and I like talking to other cancer patients and telling them about my story.
I understand that you have quite a large social media following, if I understand correctly, about 500,000 followers on Twitter. How has social media impacted your communication efforts?
It's made it easier for others to communicate with each other. When I first started, there was only one guy on the street who had a computer, and I had to go down and have him teach me how to use it. Now it's like immediate. People can get information. They can talk to other patients.
What role has personal storytelling had in your efforts for patient advocacy?
People can look at me and they can say, well, he's Exhibit A, and he survived this long, and he did these things, and he took this chance, and perhaps I may also. It's June 1999. I'm here in Anchorage, Alaska. I'm at the 19th mile of a 26.2-mile marathon. and I still have 7 more miles to go. I didn't sleep well last night, knowing that I had to get up this morning and run a marathon. And also, it stays light here 22 hours a day. As I'm running, I'm remembering 4 years ago to January 1995. That's when I was a major in the United States Army stationed in Michigan. And that's when my days became dark, 24 hours a day. I went by the doctor's office to get the results of some medical tests that I had taken before the Christmas holidays. The doctor, he gets the test and he starts reading the results to himself. And I can see his expression change. And I feel that something is not right. He looks at me, he says, "You have leukemia. The prognosis is 3 years to live." As he's telling me this, I'm thinking about my 5-year-old daughter, Patrice. Santa Claus brought her a beautiful little pink bike for Christmas, and my wife, Cecilia, and I are teaching her how to ride the bike. It still has 1 training wheel on it. The doctor continues. He says, "The only cure is a bone marrow transplant. Because you are Black, you only have a 1% chance if someone in your family does not match you." Last year, over 2,000 Blacks needed a life-saving bone marrow transplant. Only 20 of them found a match, 1%. I asked the doctor, "Will diet and exercise help?" He says, "No." I asked him, "Well, can I still work out?" He says, "Yes, but don't run any marathons." You know, it's a nice cool day here in Alaska. Even though I'm now at mile 22, the pace seems easy. After my diagnosis, things went downhill. No one in my family matched, no one on the registry matched. So I contact the bone marrow donor registry, and I say, "I want to conduct a bone marrow donor drive." They said, "No one has ever found their own bone marrow donor. It's better for you to let us do that and for you to focus on your health and getting well." Well, that response only motivates me to do bone marrow drives. So I do drives at churches, I do drives on military bases, and I do drives at malls everywhere nationwide. Friends do drives in Germany, they do drives in Hawaii, even the Pentagon. I have 350 coworkers who stick out their arms and they donate a sample. My daughter, at our 10th drive, she looks up at me and she says, "Daddy, I can't see why we can't find a bone marrow donor for you. All the blood looks the same to me." And she even sticks out her arm for medical science, and she gives us blood sample, and she doesn't even cry when that needle enters her skinny vein. Mile 23, just a 5K to go. 18 months after my diagnosis, my aunt puts on our 25th bone marrow drive. And this white businessman comes to the drive, and he says that he went out to Texas and he tried a clinical trial that saved his life. That shocks me because no one has even mentioned clinical trials to me. And I am just angry that I have been excluded from the front lines of medical research. I call his doctor and I fly all the way out to Texas. That doctor looks at my record and says, "We still have time. I'm gonna put you on clinical trial after clinical trial." At the 3-year mark, I'm in a worse condition than I started. No medicine is working. I go to sleep for 8 hours. I wake up, feel like I never went to sleep. I've lost weight. So I asked the doctor, "Are there any more drugs?" He says, "We have one drug that is close, but we're still having problems in the lab in animals. And if we ever get approval, you would be the first person to use that drug." His nurse says, "Well, you just told somebody else the same thing." I'm at mile 26. I could see the finish line. So 6 months after I came home, the doctor called and said, hey, we got approval to use that drug in humans. And I fly all the way back out to Texas, and I take the medication, and it works. And now, 10 months after taking that first dose, I'm here in Alaska, running a 26.2-mile marathon. I can see the finish line. I've raised a lot of money for blood cancer research. I did it. I've got my earphones in. I'm listening to Prince's Party Like It's 1999. I ran that marathon 4 years after being diagnosed with terminal leukemia. Now, I stand here 28 years later after a terminal leukemia diagnosis. And I just want to say, running a marathon is a lot like life. You have to keep believing, you have to keep moving, and you have to keep hoping.